Welcome to r/EntitledPeople, where this dumb Karen defends her stupid son after he thinks it would be a good idea to steal another kid's phone as part of a TikTok trend. Lady defends son's trashy TikTok trend. Hello, I am a 14-year-old boy, and I go to a middle school elementary school, basically both combined. And due to the TikTok trend Devious Lick, a 5th grader, who I will call Isaiah, grabbed my phone and ran off, shouting, "Devious Lick mother effer." I chase the kid down and smack him. I start shouting at him about how he shouldn't be doing that type of stuff. He then runs off towards the direction of the main office. When I get home that evening, he messages me through his computer or phone and starts talking smack. "Lol, you so weak, kid." And I respond to him, telling him to F off. Then he immediately started to say that he would deck me with his friend. Next day, I go to school, only to get called into the front office, and the kid with his mum are there looking at me. Then the dean tells me to apologize for smacking the kid, and I argue that he tried to steal my phone. The lady then immediately starts a screaming rant, including, "You Mexican cholo, apologize." I tell the lady that her trashy son tried stealing my phone, but she says, "Okay, but you didn't have to do that. It was just a harmless prank that you kids like these days." And that is why I have a 2-day suspension. Alright, so before I even talk about the story there, first of all, I don't know what the Devious Lick trend is, and I need to know more. So I'm going to watch a video on it and see what it is. Oh, am I really clicking on this? Devious Lick's TikTok compilation. Okay, just hit this absolutely duplicitous lick. Principal ain't going home today. And what's he got, a drill? And for the benefit of those listening on audio, all he's done there is just unscrew some bolts on his principal's car wheels. You guys are all still doing these small licks? Is it just like annoying people for the sake of it? Is that what it is? We've got this guy now attacking a... He's just stolen a police car. What is this trend? First week of school and already hit the most despicable lick. Are this just stealing? What are they stolen? A car door? What is this trend? Just hit the most ungodly lick. You stole someone. Oh my god. Okay. Alright, that one's actually like semi-funny. I mean, put it in the bin. Oh, okay. That was actually semi-decent. I'm not gonna lie. I hope you gave them back, is what I'll say. What a trend. Just stealing stuff. TikTok, man, it's so elite. Alright, so I kind of get the trend a little bit. Like, I've seen better trends, is all I'm gonna say. But weird trend. Weird app. Let's be realistic. Now moving on to our second Entitled People story. Sister tries to have me arrested so she can go party, then tries to break in and steal our stuff. We come from a big New York Italian family. My older sister and I are total polar opposites. She was boisterous, very well endowed from a young age, very popular, very full of herself, and self-obsessed. Never finishes anything, never finished school, can't hold a job, etc. I was very small, thin, tomboyish, uncoordinated, clumsy, very shy, bookworm. I didn't have many friends, and I usually wandered alone somewhere or I was reading. I've had a job since I was 13. Long story, but this all ties in as it's only within a few days of it all happening. So moving on, we are both adults and are both married. My sister has a son, and I'm pregnant with my first child. After giving birth, we moved back to the city my family lives in. My older sister is having marital issues and is actually getting ready to leave her husband. My husband and I had a decent-sized house that we were renting from my uncle. A friend of ours from college was staying in one of the rooms. After a discussion, we decided to invite my sister and her son, who was almost 5, to move in with us as a live-in nanny. We let her know that she wouldn't have to pay any rent or utilities, and that she would need to watch my daughter whenever we needed to work. She readily agreed. My husband and I worked opposite shifts, so this was perfect for us. We moved her in right away. We had her sign a paper agreeing to the whole thing. Nothing technically legal, but just something that we could refer to later if needed. Things went south pretty quickly. I'll be paraphrasing, as this was a long time ago and exact wording won't be possible, but it's pretty spot on. Firstly, let me note that my older sister had gained a substantial amount of weight, which made certain areas of her upper torso much larger than before, like double G large. We get up one morning to make coffee. Our roommate is already up. My sister comes out wearing nothing but a very baggy tank top and underwear that was much too small. Things were hanging out everywhere. My husband spit his coffee out. Our roommate walked in and then immediately walked back out, and I told my sister to go and put on some clothes. She huffed, put her hands on her hips, and loudly yelled, "This is my house too. I'll dress how I want." I told her to take some pride in herself and go and put some dang clothes on. She stomped off like a little kid, dressed, and came back out. My husband asked me loudly, on purpose so that my sister would hear, "This isn't going to be a problem with her going forward, is it?" I looked her dead in the face and said, "It better not be, right?" She looked at me, rolled her eyes, and said, "Fine, but that just means that these idiots," pointing at my husband and roommate, "don't know what they're missing." Still full of herself. Fantastic. Now, this has only been about 2 weeks since moving her in, by the way. The next day, our roommate came to us and said that he believed my sister may have taken money from his room. He stated that he'd only left a small amount of cash on his nightstand and it was now gone. His door was always closed, but it was open when he came home. My sister, unfortunately, has stolen cash from me many times when we were kids growing up, so I knew it was probably her. I went to confront her about it, knowing full well that she took it. Again, she immediately started off by yelling as loudly as she could, "I did not steal anyone's money. You always blame me for this, and you never have any proof." Her son came running around the corner with a fistful of dollars and a big smile. "Is this the money, Mama? The money you said we could go and get McDonald's with?" I stared at her and then at my nephew. She walked over to him, took the money from him, and told me, "This is my money. I already had this before I moved in." The one thing she hadn't noticed was mixed in with the US dollars, some Mexican pesos. Our roommate's family lived in Tucson, Arizona. His father was a professor at U of A and was of Mexican descent. They would often go south of the border to visit as they had a very large extended family. I quickly snatched the money from my sister's hands. I examined it, and when I pulled out the pesos, I again stared at her. I said, "And just what did you think you were gonna do with these?" She slammed her fist on the wall and told me to go F off in Italian and stomped off and slammed her door. My nephew stood there, almost in tears. He was scared and upset. He and I had had a wonderful relationship, so I sat him down and told him that everything was okay and not to worry. I'd bring him to McDonald's and get him the best Happy Meal ever. This brightened him up and he went skipping off. The next day, we started our work week. I gave my sister our schedules. I went over everything with her. As my daughter had been premature, there was a little bit of extra care involved. She was a few months old now, but she was very small and had a severe lactose allergy. My sister then mentioned that a friend of hers wanted her to go out and party the next night. I told her that she knew she had to watch the baby. She knew several weeks ahead of time what my schedule was and that she'd agreed to it. She said, "I never get to go anywhere, and now that I'm free of that man, I want to go party. Can't you have that guy who lives here watch her?" I said, "That guy is our friend. He's not in town and it's not his job to watch our daughter. It's literally your job. You agreed to live here rent-free to watch her whenever we need it." She rolled her eyes and stated, "This is ridiculous. It's one dang night. Can't you figure something else out?" I said, "If you would like to pay for a babysitter to come over, then fine. But if not, then you will do as you agreed." "Fine," she said. Everything went fine the first night. I came home, baby asleep, sister and nephew asleep. Note on the fridge from my husband stating that all seemed good. I go to bed. I'm woken up about 3 hours later to hear several children screaming and laughing. I get up and go out to the living room to see that I have a house full of children and some of my sister's friends, including the one friend that wanted her to party, sitting on the couch and chairs. I immediately said, "What in the heck is going on?" My sister and her friends look up. One of the friends say, "Uh-oh, party police." I grab my sister's arm and pull her to the kitchen. "What in the F is going on here? I am trying to sleep." She replies, "Since I cannot leave, I invited my friends over to have some fun." I'm really irritated at this point. Your friends need to leave immediately. You did not ask if you could bring all these people here, and it's a workday night for us. Have some freaking respect. And you know my daughter can't have a bunch of people around her. She's still too vulnerable. My sister waves her hand and replies, "Oh, give it a goddamn rest. She's in her crib. No one's near here, and I need my friends. I need to socialize. I haven't been able to have fun in years." I insisted again that her friends leave now. I reminded my sister that no matter what she thinks, this is my house. She stomps off again and asks everyone to leave. I get up to go to work that evening. Everything seems to be fine. My nephew bounces in, happy as always, thrilled with his Happy Meal toy we got him the other day. My sister brushes past me, literally bumping my shoulder. I stare at her again. She mumbles something under her breath and heads to the kitchen. I walk in after her and she turns and stares at me. She slams a jar on the counter and immediately starts yelling at me. I didn't know I was going to have to watch your dang kid all the time. I want to go and do my own thing. Shocked, I asked her at what point did she not understand that she'd be a live-in nanny to watch the baby whenever we were working. But that's not the dang point. I know what I said, but I didn't think you were serious. I said, fine, we'll talk when I get home in the morning from work and figure out where we need to go from here. I got my things and I left. 2 hours later, I get a call at work from someone identifying themselves as a police officer. They're asking me to come home due to an incident at the house. I arrive about 30 minutes later to see 3 police cruisers, lights on, several officers milling around my home. My older sister is standing next to an officer, talking, and my roommate, who appears to have just come back from out of town, is talking to another officer. My husband is also now arriving back from school. A police sergeant walks up to me and asks my name, and I tell him who I am. He asks me to follow him over to where my sister is. While following the officer, I notice a few dozen yards away, the friend my sister wanted to go party with, parked in her car, watching. The officer directs me to where my sister is. I wander over, and immediately my sister starts yelling at me. How could you do that? How could you just leave her like that? What is wrong with you? I stand frozen, not understanding the situation yet. The officer looks at me and asks me where I've been. I tell him I was at work. The officer asks if I make it a habit to leave my infant alone at home while working. It finally dawns on me what is going on. I tell the officer, absolutely not. Never. My sister here was hired to be our live-in nanny and was to be watching her tonight. She watched her last night as well. She has the schedule in detail and we've discussed everything at length. My sister immediately shouts, "That's a lie! I had no idea you were going to work. I was leaving with my friend to go out for the night when I heard the baby cry. I had no idea you left her here. I figured you guys had gone out for the night." Our roommate and my husband join us. My roommate says he came home to find my sister on the phone with the police, saying that I had abandoned the baby. And my sister's friend was in the house telling her to hurry so they wouldn't miss the drink specials at a local bar. My husband goes in the house with an officer, shows him our work schedule on the fridge, my sister's room, and the baby's crib in her room. He then shows him the paper we had her sign with all the agreed to info. Another officer goes over to the car parked down the street and tells the friend to come over. The officer starts to question the friend about the phone call. My sister immediately starts yelling, "She has nothing to do with this. She came here to pick me up and we both heard the baby crying." I tell the officer that this is par for the course with my sister. She made all this up. My sister again starts screaming at the top of her lungs. "This is all a lie. I don't know what she's telling you, but it's a lie. I had no idea the baby was here alone." And then she starts to fake cry. And just as things seem ridiculous enough, my nephew is brought out crying, telling the officer holding him, "But Mummy said it was okay to leave the baby, that Auntie would be home soon and we were going to go out." I started to laugh. I almost bent over laughing as my sister reached for her son, saying, "He doesn't know what he's saying." But my nephew just said, "Mummy, don't lie. You said you were going to go play." That was awesome. The look on her face and the officers' faces was priceless. My sister had fabricated this ridiculous story and called the police, all so she didn't have to work and could go out drinking. The crib was in her room. The work schedule and the signed paper, plus, out of the mouths of babes, my nephew telling his mummy not to lie in front of a half-dozen police officers. Yeah, I was annoyed, but I was laughing now. The officers were pretty angry now too, realizing the situation. I told them I wanted my sister off my property. She wasn't on the lease. They escorted her into the house and had her pack up the few belongings that she came with, which wasn't much. Just clothes, hygiene stuff, and a few personal knickknacks. I walked up to my sister with the signed agreement, tore it in half, and handed it to her. I told her that she was never welcome back and I wanted nothing to do with her ever again. she could go with her friend. She was escorted off the lawn. I told the officers I didn't want to press any charges. She had no money and nowhere to go other than her friend. That was more than enough. The police eventually left. My husband, roommate and I go and sit in the living room staring at each other. We have no words. We just sit for a while. The next day, my husband is off at work. My roommate is sleeping in. I take the baby to go to a doctor's appointment and the grocery store, then to stop at my dad's place for a brief visit. I left a note on the fridge letting my roommate know where I was. Just as I arrive at my dad's, he jogs down the driveway and says, "Better go home, your roommate called." It takes me about 15 minutes to get home, and standing in front of the door is my sister, screaming at the top of her lungs with 2 police officers on either side of her. I drive up and get out of my car. My sister immediately tries to rush at me, screaming obscenities in Italian at me. Now, we didn't even learn that much growing up, but we can cuss like truckers in Italian. The officers stop her. My roommate comes around from the backyard, having come out of the back door instead of the front where my sister was. I ask what the heck is going on. Neighbors are now coming out to see what's going on. So my roommate had called the police because my sister tried to kick in the door. She said that we had all of her electronic equipment in there and that this was her house and that we illegally removed her. When he wouldn't let her in, she began kicking and pounding on the door, screaming at the top of her lungs. My husband had a very nice stereo setup with a multi-disc CD player, speakers, subwoofers, tuner, several dozen CDs, and more. We had a new large TV with several video game consoles, VHS players, and a bookshelf full of movies and video games. Yeah, by the way, you lot, comment down below if you know what a VHS player is. And if you don't know what a VHS player is, try and guess what it is. I'm actually interested. Anyway, turns out my sister was attempting to break into the house and steal all of it. She was unhinged at this point. She was so incensed that spit was flying from her mouth when she was screaming. "How dare you do this to me? These are all my things you stole, everything from me. You're a liar and a thief telling the police on me. I'll get you for this. I'm gonna have you evicted. I'm calling Dad. He'll have his brother kick you out. You'll be on the streets. On the street, you dogs." The police ask us if she's on the lease. We tell them no and give them the report from last night. The officer looks at the report, nods, and says, "Oh, this is that place. Yeah, we heard about this. Is this the same lady that called in the false report last night?" I tell him, yep, same person. He then asks if I would like to trespass her, and I told him absolutely. He turns to her while his partner takes out some papers and starts writing. He gives her the spiel regarding the trespass order. The officer looks at me, and I walk over and quietly say, "See that car parked 2 houses down? Yeah, that one. Can you issue the driver a trespass order too? That's the other person from last night." He then walks over to that car. They tell my sister if they have one more incident with her, she will be under arrest. She stomps off down the street to her friend's car, literally screaming at the top of her lungs every obscenity you can imagine in English and Italian. We thank the officers and they take off. I talk to my neighbors and apologize for the trouble. Most of them are elderly and very understanding. A retired Navy officer next door says that he'll be happy to keep an eye on the house for us when we aren't home. I thank him profusely. He pats his truck and says, "Your sister is a nut." I agreed. I head back over to my dad's place to visit and go over the last 2 days' events. While my baby is inside sleeping, my dad and I go to his garage to do some work on a project car of his. Now, being the only kid of his who knows how to work on cars, this is our thing. We bust a few knuckles, have a couple drinks, and shoot the poop for a while. A couple hours later, we hear a car screech to a stop in front of his house. He has a very long dirt driveway, so the car was still on pavement. Out jumps my sister, red-faced and fuming mad. She immediately starts stomping down the driveway, fists balled up. My dad and I are sitting on the edge of the car near the engine, hood up, staring at her. She starts screaming. "Did she tell you she kicked me and your grandson out on the street? Did she tell you she lied to the police about abandoning her daughter? Did she tell you she called the police on me when I tried to get things she stole from me? I am the victim here, not her. I want her evicted from my uncle's house. I want you to call him now and kick her out. She's got no right to do this to me, no right to be there." My dad looks down at me, and I shrug. My sister stops about 30 feet in front of us. She literally starts jumping up and down. I want her kicked out now. Now. Seeing a 25-year-old woman jumping up and down, screaming like a 2-year-old was quite the sight. My dad looks at her. My dad can look at you and make your bones freeze. My sister immediately stops. He says, no. That was it. Just no. He then just turns around and starts working on the car again. I smirked at my sister. Enraged, she starts screaming obscenities at me again. My dad slowly turns around, takes 2 steps towards her, and, in a deep, loud, reverberating voice, says, Basta, which pretty much translates as, enough. You will not behave in this manner. You will not talk to your sister until you can be civil. Go away now. You do not disobey my dad, ever. My sister, still red-faced, turns around and walks off to the car and gets in. Her friend revs the engine of her very old, beat-up sedan, screams F you both, and takes off. My dad turns around and says, well, how about some pizza? Takes another drink, and goes back to working on the engine. I literally haven't spoken to my sister since this event, and my daughter is now 27. Well, the first thing that springs to my mind there is that I really hope your nephew is okay, because he actually sounded like a pretty good kid, just has a horrible, horrible mother. Best of luck to him, because it's going to be a tough life. Anyway, the first 18 years, that is. But hey, hopefully you can get through it. Seems like a nice kid. You get on well. Maybe just take him away from his mum at some point, or don't do that, but you know, help him out. I mean, to be fair, I'm just looking through the comments, and someone has said, can I ask what happened to your nephew? Because obviously this was a long time ago. I hope he wasn't too traumatized and had escaped relatively unscathed from his entitled mum. OP replied, he is a fantastic man, and he grew up just fine. That's amazing. Head chef at a restaurant, kids of his own, we talk all the time, and he comes out to visit from time to time. Phenomenal news. Could not have asked for anything more. I tell you what, this is the good thing about stories that are really old. Like, how long ago did this happen? Over 20 years ago? And yeah, now we know the result. Brilliant. Ah, and here we go. Someone has asked what happened to your sister. Must have an inkling to know a bit. I completely agree. So, she lives in a very small town back east and is still the same. Always scheming to find the easy way out of being an adult. Last I heard, she was trying to figure out a way to get on disability so she didn't have to work. So just a terrible person, really. Yeah, we knew that already. Fair enough. It's pretty crazy though how in like 20 years she just hasn't changed at all. Why? Surely at some point you have a little bit of, you know, self-reflection. You're like, oh, actually I'm not been the greatest person over the last 2 decades. Who knows? Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of r/EntitledPeople. I really hope you have enjoyed it. If you did and you want to see more from this subreddit straight away, check out this video. It's an absolute classic. If you are new to the channel, hit this button over here to subscribe, and I will see you guys all tomorrow with another brand new video.